All right, Susan Pullen, so nice to be back with you.
And you, Ron.
So I'm Ron Tester, and this is Susan Pullen, and we are here today talking about what makes our businesses successful. So, Susan, why don't you jump in and tell us?
Yeah, so I thought of so many ways I could answer this question. Um, and there were three kind of big headlines, I think, that stood out for me. One of them is attending to both the inner work and the outer work. One of them is consistency, and one of them is strategy. So I can break those down. So the inner work for me is like getting my head in the right space for the day. It's my attitude, my beliefs, my outlook. And it's also working with the places in myself that have resistance, that are procrastinating, that feel nervous, all of the ways that I might kind of get in my own way or slow down or limit my own progress. As I keep working with those, my business has opened up and opened up and opened up because I feel comfortable, or I'm capable of stretching a little more into taking action in different ways. But I also think that clients just energetically feel that. People feel it if I say, well, this is $150. Um, or if I say it's $150. Um, people respond to that even unconsciously. We pick things up. So for me to keep doing that inner work has really kept my business expanding and kept me expanding.
Mhm.
And then I think we do well, or I've done well, to pair that with also taking tangible action, emailing people, meeting people, telling people about what I do, offering them that we could work together and what that would look like. So doing also those outer, visible, measurable, tangible kinds of things that are also needed besides just meditating on the couch.
So I'm glad you mentioned meditating on the couch because I was going to ask you. I I I totally get doing the inner work and the outer work. I think the both are necessary. Um, for you, if I was to take a video camera and say, okay, here's Susan doing the inner work. Obviously, there's a lot going on in your head, but does it look like meditating on a couch? Are there other practices or things that you do? Do you journal? I don't know. I'm just asking. Um, Obviously, we can't get inside your head, but what does it look like if you say today, this morning, I'm going to do some inner work?
Yeah. So there are two components. We might call one preventative, or, there's one that's just like, this is where I want to stand in my day today. And some of that is, like you were saying earlier in our conversation, like being grounded in being of service.
Mhm.
And also like trusting that I'll be taken care of in that, and not confusing that for the particular client or particular person sitting in front of me, but believing that, the universe is conspiring in my favor, so to speak. Um, and and I think when I can ground myself in like the love and support, I'm a spiritual person, so that's part of my practice, along with actual people. When I ground myself in that love and support that's available to me and around me, then I feel like I don't get taken for as much of an ego ride. Someone says yes, someone says no, someone says, oh, that's a lot of money. Someone reschedules or cancels or whatever. That's not the source of my worth.
Hmm.
When I start from the place of like, this is who I am and this is what holds me and this is what I'm about here.
Hmm.
So part of it is meditation, it's reading uplifting things. It's I have a variety of ways for me of like connecting with that spiritual support. So that's all part of it. And then the other piece is when I notice that I'm not doing something, or I notice that there's a place in me that goes, um, when I think about raising my rates, or I think about, doing a presentation in front of a group of people I don't know, or whatever it is, however I'm looking at stretching myself a bit, where it feels right to do that, but also it feels kind of scary.
Mm.
Then I have processes, healing approaches for getting at those places in myself where I feel stuck or I feel like I'm holding back.
Mm. Nice, nice. I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things that you shared with me is a little YouTube video that you made of it's a meditation about dwelling in love, essentially. And maybe we could link to that in the show notes here because I think that simple little things like that, it doesn't take a long time, but it is a practical way of grounding for me. I'm just going to listen to that, and it really helps to center my mind. And right over there, you can't see it, but there's a whiteboard, and I have different things written out there that are a constant reminder, and I can easily glance over there when I'm working. And if I'm feeling some anxiety or some resistance to doing something, and I can say, okay, well, this is what's true, and this is what's important. And you would think that as somebody who's been doing this for a long time, I wouldn't need that, or hypothetically, I would grow out of it, but I haven't. I still need it.
Yeah, I think that's all of us, Ron. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I have in my space, I don't have a whiteboard, but I still have little things in my space that that remind me that yeah, that I've got support.
Yeah, no, I love that. Love that. I don't have Baby Yoda, but I do have something from Graceland that says taking care of business. So, um, yeah, I guess that having those little reminders, I think is super helpful. Okay, so we talked about doing the inner work, and some is preventative and some is in the moment. I need to, recenter or be regrounded. And then we talked about the outer work, and just different things like that. Tell me more about the outer work. So what are the things that have been helpful in building a successful practice for you?
Yeah. So actually reaching out to people. It sounds so simple and it's so scary for so many of us. Um, but building relationships, meeting people, just, I mean, the simple um, piece of letting people know what I offer, what the opportunity is for them. The work I do, a lot of people don't know um, that there's even help for that. They think, well, this is just part of me, or I just have to live with this, or I just have to get over it, whatever that means. Um, so, so just making the invitation, being public about these things are possible if we work together. Uh, it's a little thing and it's a really big thing. And like we were talking about, it comes from that place of, I believe that I'm here to be of service in this way. That's what I'm committed to. And if that's my commitment, then that means letting people know that there's an opportunity for them there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. A lot of the clients that I work with, it feels like when we're offline or not thinking about business, we're just humans doing a human thing, right? We talk to each other, we go hang out, we do all that sort of thing. And then when we think about being the business owner or the person who has to do marketing or selling or whatever like that, it's like we put on this other persona, and it reminds me of like an I can't remember, it's an old movie where a person has to wear armor that doesn't fit at all, right? That they're much, the armor's much too heavy, and that and because of that, although it's meant to protect them, it actually doesn't allow them to do the thing that they need to do, right? In terms of going to battle. And I feel like we sometimes put on this crazy heavy armor, thinking that okay, now I've got to wear my marketing armor and I go out into the world and it's going to be a fierce battle, and that and we leave behind our sense of humanity, right? I mean, in the end, if you're a coach, if you're a healer, if you do what we do, all we're trying to do is be of service, right? And all we're trying to do, I mean, if we come from the right place, in my opinion, the right place, then what you want to do is be of service, and you do that as a human. You don't have to put on armor to go be of service, right? And of course, you have to protect yourself because the world can sometimes be crazy, but you don't have to be somebody that you're not. You don't have to pretend that you're somebody that you're not. So. Um, yeah, I think that is important because we're talking about, that is big and it's little, because there's a part of us we naturally connect. I think we're meant to be in
Mm.
community. I think we're meant to connect, and just on a natural basis. Like, if I'm going to give you a call, I don't have to think, okay, I'm going to gear up and call Susan. I just call you or whatever, right? But in the as soon as we put on that marketing armor, then we're like, okay, now I've got to send the email, and everything seems like daunting and a big deal, or bigger than it has to be. So I appreciate what you said about that, having that the perspective that it is a big deal and it's a little deal. And I think when we come from our own humanity, it makes it right sized, right? Because it is just what it is. We don't have to make it bigger or smaller. It's just what is. But if we're coming from a place of service and humanity, that's what I think.
I love that. And I loved your description. It really resonates for me for most of the years that I've been in business of like, yes, let me psych myself up to do this big thing of sending a 2 sentence text.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What comes to your mind, Ron, when you think about how success comes to your business and what helps your business?
Um, so I've thought about a couple things, and what I'd like to start with, and this is something that I don't talk as much about, but I really think that doing the inner work of getting right with who I am and being comfortable with expressing myself out in the world and showing up in the world has been transformative for me. And I mean, because I've been a physical therapist since 1995. I've owned my own business, and had a very successful business, and ended up selling it. I've been coaching folks, and still there was a big part of me that just didn't want to show up in the world, right? I mean, and when I did show up, I was trying to be all things to all people. I was trying to be, and honestly, I ended up being just very generic, right? It's like when I hired my first coach a zillion years ago, um, I was talking to them about this, and so they went and looked at my social posts, right? Things that I had said and done, and specifically in relation to my business. And afterwards, she's like, there's no you there. There's
Mhm.
no you there. It's just and it's true, because I was afraid to show up as me, right? I thought if I was going to build a business out and be social and appear in people's worlds, I had to be something other than what I was, right? And so there are a lot of reasons for that. But the bottom line is that it wasn't until I became progressively more comfortable with who I am, how I show up in the world, and not in a weird or egocentric way, but being comfortable taking up space, right?
Mhm.
Like, it's okay for me to show up in the world. It's okay if I show up on somebody's Instagram feed. They're not going to curse me that I'm wasting their valuable time or whatever it is, right? I mean, it's just what is. And so and if they do, then that's okay, because then they're probably not the right person for me. I'm not the right person for them. No big deal, right? There's no judgment or whatever. but forever, for the longest time, I struggled with that. And I would commit to things. I would sign up for programs. I would do this and I would do that. And I would put myself in positions where I had to show up, and I would struggle and I would show up. And then as soon as that thing was over, I would run back and hide. Be like, okay, thank God that's done with. Now it's time for me to hide again. And it's been a relatively recent phenomenon. And truthfully, a lot of it's been working with you on the inner work. Where I have finally felt like, okay, I'm okay. And I'm gonna show up with all of me. I've got a shadow side, I've got, the good-hearted part of me, and all of that's going to show up. And for the people that I'm meant to serve, I will serve them. And for the people that I'm not meant to, and it takes so much pressure off, right? Because for some reason, when I was younger, I really thought, every conversation was, could be the conversation that I
Mhm.
need to have or not have. And, I would invest all of this time and energy and stress about, oh my gosh, now we're going to talk about this thing. We're going to talk about, becoming a client, or, what I could do. And part of that was just getting used to getting comfortable with it. But really what it was getting comfortable with me and showing up and just being okay with whatever was. And so I'm a spiritual person as well. I believe that the universe does look out for us and does serve us, even in ways that we don't necessarily want or wouldn't invite.
Yeah.
And that's okay, right? Because when we can hold that perspective. So for me, I would say the biggest, most impactful thing that that has helped me to be successful in business, has helped me to build my practice, is just doing the inner work and being comfortable showing up authentically, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Ron. And a lot of that really resonates for me, and I'm sure resonates for people listening as well, because I think that visibility piece, that occupying space, that's huge for a lot of people. A lot of people.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's funny. I
Yeah.
remember being invited onto somebody's podcast it wasn't the first time, but it was the first time that it was a pretty substantial podcast. I'm not going to mention it because I don't even want anybody to find it. But I will tell you that I was so nervous. I was sick to my stomach beforehand. And I'd looked at this person's guests, and they had like, oh, so and so, the billionaire, is going to talk
Mm.
about this and that, and honestly, and then I'm like, and P Brain Little Ron is going to talk about whatever. And I was so nervous, and I was sick to myself, and I was stressed out. And I'm sure, although the host didn't say it, I'm sure I sounded like a robot, because I'm like, I am very well, thank you. Because I was just the stress of it all, right? And over time, just the practice of showing up and being who I am, and trusting that it's going to be okay. I'm not saying I'm a great podcast guest, but I feel certainly much more comfortable. And I think people who watch me now would at least have a better sense of who I really am,
Mhm.
right? So I think that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah,
is.
yeah. So the other big component for me is really a kind of a fundamental commitment to service, right? I mean, in my life, I have chosen to serve particularly business owners, small business owners, and service providers. So if you think about my ideal clients, they are people that are either like they're one-person shows, or they have a small team typically. They are service providers, right? So I don't work with manufacturing or logistics or that sort of thing. Most of them are kind of heart-centered, in the sense that they believe in service for the sake of service, right? And what I really that's kind of who I am, and that's who I want to serve. And so when I think about that, and I think about in my own life, so if you go back, say 24 years, when I was starting my first business, um, I really could have used somebody,
Mhm.
I mean, I really could have used somebody. I was a physical therapist who didn't know anything about business, except I knew I wanted to take better care of my patients than the people that I was working for wanted me to take care of, right? They wanted to cut corners and optimize profits, and I'm all for profits. I'm a businessman, but fundamentally, I think that, in profession like physical therapy, health and wellness, coaching, all those sorts of things, if you're not fundamentally doing it for the right reason, then you're not going to get the results that people hire you for, right? And the analogy that I always use is if you make paper clips and you make a bad paper clip, well, shame on you. That's not good, right? But if you're in the business of really trying to impact people's lives through physical therapy or anything else, and you don't do a good job because you just want to cut corners, optimize money, then I think it's wrong. It doesn't work. And so after I sold my last business and I just committed to coaching full time, I really thought, I want to teach. And truthfully, there's a part of me that was terrified of picking a niche, right? Because I'm
Mhm.
like, I can serve everyone. What do you do? You make paper clips. Excellent. That's my job too, right? I mean, there was a sense of, and there is genuinely a sense in which people can help people generally, right? But when I say I'm committed to helping service providers, solopreneurs, small business owners, to make a difference in the world, then even if I don't feel like doing the thing, like I don't particularly like showing up on video, right? I mean, it's something I'm getting used to, but it's not my favorite. I'd rather write. I'm pretty good at writing. But how can I serve the people that I'm meant to serve, right? Whether it's a client or it's just out it's putting information out into the world. When I'm commenting on somebody's LinkedIn, I genuinely am thinking, what would I want somebody to say to me if I was in that situation? And from that, I find the motivation to get up and to do and to make things really excellent, right? I don't want to give short shrift to the work that I do. I don't want people to, look at this is something I tell people all the time. If your advice sounds something like, work smarter, not harder, and that's it, I mean, that's a fortune cookie. That's not real advice, right? And the reality is that they're in the business coaching world because we're largely unregulated.
Mhm.
You could say anything and maybe it sounds like, oh, double your prices or, reach more people or whatever. And it's like, well, how do I do that? What's that about? Right. And so if there's no depth, if there's no excellence in what it is, why do it really? So for me, I think, obviously I'm still a work in progress, but for me, the commitment to serving who I serve and wanting to show up in excellent ways for them really has made the difference because when I do that, I can, make those calls or send those texts or do all the things that are necessary. And I'm committed to going inside and doing the inner work as well, because I know that the more inner work that I do, the more authentically I show up, the more of an impact I'll have.
Yeah. And Ron, one of the things I really appreciate about you and about working with you as a client myself, is your uh, attention to and value uh, of authenticity and humanity and realness and that like genuine human connection
Mm,
that is also really important to me, but I think gets lost in a lot of business and marketing and sales, you know, training and coaching and things like that. So that's something I really appreciate about you.
thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It is weird that in the business world and marketing and sales, like it's so easy, like, okay, we take on a different language and we
Mm.
talk in a kind of a weird dialect that nobody understands, or we use code words. I was recently talking with somebody and they had this way of talking about something and I was like, I don't understand what it is that you're saying, and I'm a businessman. I've had successful businesses, and I was like, but what are you saying? And when it came down to it, they were thinking that they needed to be clever and
Mm.
um, catchy and all that sort of thing. And I'm like, just be clear, right? Just say what you want to say. And you don't have to come up with a sneaky, secret, manipulative phrase that's going to push somebody's button and get them to hand over their wallet. Just be clear with what what you're trying to say, and people will appreciate that. And in my opinion, people will resonate with that more than kind of putting on this. There's this term called bro marketer,
Mm.
which is kind of a culture, and I don't want to speak too much about that, except to say that that sometimes when we get into these little worlds of, okay, I'm a business coach, and so, and I pick up the lingo, and I'm trying, and all of a sudden I'm buying a fake Rolex to show that I'm, whatever. Don't have a fake Rolex, but you know what I mean. It becomes this thing, and you almost think, if I'm going to be successful, I've got to do this. I've got to have, all these followers on social media, and I've got to have, my Lamborghini outside, which strangely resembles the Honda Accord. Um, it's just that there is this weirdness of pretense that somehow feels like this is what's going to get people. But I think in the end, at least for my people, that's not what's going to get to people.
Yeah, yeah. And that really resonates for me. I focus on, and you and I together are focusing on working with coaches and healers and people who are in really support roles for other people. And I think there's in in that realm, it's not always like the fake Rolex, but sometimes there's a sense of I have to have everything inside me spick and
Mm.
span and, spotlessly healed and perfected and polished to a lovely glow, before I can be of service and before I can, really help people and hold that space. And I think, just like what you're saying, when we come from a genuine place, including, our imperfections and our growing edge. And of course, we need to be somewhat ahead of our clients on that path, partly so they don't just trigger our stuff. Um, but when we've got ourselves together to a certain point, then we really can be of service, and there's more compassion, there's more, there's more connection, there's more authenticity, we can be of service partly because we can role model. um I'm not a perfect example of a human being, and I can still have a good life, and you can too, other people can too.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. One of the things I'm a big believer on, and that I say a lot, is check your ego, right? Check your ego at the door. Let it sit, because the truth is, and according to me, the truth is that what we have is a gift, right? And if we have a gift, then, and we have the opportunity to share that gift with others, then it's really not so much about us, it's about the gift, right? And if I have a gift, if I had, like, let's say a $10 bill or something like that, and it'd been given to me, and I wanted to share it with you, because I'm going to give Susan five, well, is he perfect? Is he, how what kind of man is this to, is he sinless, or what, you just think, oh, somebody's giving me $5. That's pretty cool. Yeah, right. And it's just, it's the focus is on the gift. And when you have a gift to share, then, we are all imperfect. Some of us just, we don't hide it as well as others. Not that we should hide it, but you know what I'm saying. And so I think there is a place for us just to be human and to show up. And I think the people that I appreciate and resonate with the most are human beings, flaws and all.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Ron, is there more that came to your mind in answer to what makes your business work?
The other big thing that I would say is in not trying to do it alone.
Mm.
Honestly, it's something that, as a business coach, I'm like, well, I'm a business coach. I should have all the answers. I should, right? I should know all the things. I've got these certifications. Look at my wall. All that. The truth is that no matter how good we are, we need other people, right? I mean, if you look at big companies, they have CEOs, but they also have boards, they have advisors, they've got mentors, they've got all that sort of thing. And I think that sometimes in the world of when, as the businesses get smaller, and sometimes they're just one person, um, it feels like I need to know all the answers, or I need to do that. And so, I mean, we can, look on YouTube, or search on Google, and all that's fine and helpful. And I do that on a regular basis. But having another human being that can say, I see what's going on. have you considered this? Right. I was having a conversation earlier today with a coach, and I was saying, these are the things that I'm doing. And she's like, well, what about X? And I was like, and so we kind of walked through that. And then she's like, okay, well, that sounds good. What about Y? And I was like, oh, I had not even, it never crossed my mind to consider Y. Right. And, I think that if we try to do it alone, it is so much slower and so much more painful, right? I mean, doing the inner work, I've read, I don't know, 200, 300, more than that books on doing that work, right? Healing the shame within, and on and on, the inner child. I've done all that sort of thing, but really it was in working with another person that I was able to make real substantial progress, because again, they can see things that I just can't see, right? Somebody said to me once, if you could have already done it, you already would have, right? By yourself. And in some ways, that just took the pressure off to say, it doesn't mean that I'm a failure, a bad person, that I'm weak or dumb or whatever. It just means I'm human. And so to have that experience of saying, I'm going to find somebody that I can trust to do this, right? I mean, a lot of the inner work that I've done over the past couple of years has been with you, and it's been at times hard and at times spectacular, right? But it's always been meaningful, helpful, and that sort of thing. But even before you, as I was beginning this process, I had other people that were helping me along the way, right? And I just think it matters a great deal not to try and do it alone. And inner work, but also sometimes just the outer work. I don't know how to run a Facebook ad. Who can I call, right? Or stuff like that, which isn't so dramatic, but it's still important for building a business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally resonate with everything that you've said. I know as my business coach, you've helped me see some blind spots and where my thinking wasn't quite I'll say accurate in terms of like coming from that place of service. And instead I was caught up in more thinking about me and thinking about, am I doing this right? Am I good enough to do this, or whatever? And will I be bothering people? Those kinds of things. And you always have helped me come back to like the big picture and seeing what's important and what's not important.
Mhm.
And that applies so much to the outer work as well, of like, let these things go, focus on this. I think for me, like so many people, it was sort of a badge of honor of I do everything, and I do it all myself, and I do it my way, and I've figured it out. And man, I just think that cost me years, years and years and years, where I could have been making progress so much faster if I had been willing to say, someone else might have a better idea about this. And I don't need to start from scratch, and I don't need to develop the skills and the specialization in all 150 areas of running a business. I can I can focus on being a practitioner well, and being the leader and the visionary of my business well, and in choosing the people who support me and who are on my team well. And those are places that make sense. But I don't need to become an expert in WordPress and Facebook ads and all of the things to have a successful business. I need to not become an expert in those things in order to have a successful business. But it took me, decades to figure that out.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just thinking about, I had a client once who was a healthcare practitioner, a physician, who had a database of patients and that sort of thing, and decided that he was going to become an expert in database management and all this sort of thing. And he called me up. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this, And my job as his coach was to talk him off the off of that. Like, please do not waste, you for what little you need to do in terms of database management, you could hire somebody very easily for a small amount of money. It's not like he was going to develop and become a database engineer or something. He just wanted to be able to manipulate some of the data. But sometimes we just get in the habit. It's like, well, I've got to do the things. And sometimes it's so much better just not to do the thing. And sometimes you don't even realize it until somebody says, is that really a good use of your time? Yeah. So
Yes,
good.
so true. I'm flooded with examples as you're
Yes.
talking. Yeah.
As we're nearing the end here, are there is there anything else that you would share about how you have built a successful business?
Yeah, and I think it ties in very much with what we are talking about having, a coach or like someone with a professional mindset and expertise about business and things. Um, because the other two pieces are the strategy and the consistency. And for me, those really go hand in hand. So I used to do this like scattershot, like well, I'll do one podcast, I'll do one speaking thing, I'll do one article, I'll do, a few social media posts, like a little of this, a little of that, and just once or a couple times. And then it was like, well, I'm doing the thing, but it's not working. Um, but it wasn't part of a, a flow, a package, like a plan. There was no plan.
Mhm.
And and once, when I learned, oh, okay, if I make the plan, then I can let all these other things go. I focus on this. I know why I'm doing this. And that makes it more effective because I know my goal with this is that it leads to that. Where before there was no leading to anything.
Right.
Yeah, and then to keep doing it, to iterate and to I know that our lives are crazy. My life is crazy. There's so much coming into my inbox and that I talk to people about, even things that I really want to do. I get an email and then I forget about it. So like that consistency of doing the things,
Mhm.
that's, I think, also just so important, doing the right things. But yeah.
I totally agree. And boy, when I started my first business, I knew I needed clients. I needed to get the word out, and I had no idea what to do and didn't really have a strategy at all. Again, I was a physical therapist, knew nothing about business. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I would show up at networking events and speak, and somebody came and knocked on my door, said, "Would you like to advertise in our magazine?" I'm like, I guess, because I didn't know. I had no idea. Like, so I mean, all the preposterous things that you can imagine somebody could do to get the word out, I did them and tried them and probably with zero consistency, and so of course nothing worked. I mean, eventually I figured it out. But at the beginning, I was wasting so much money, literally tens of thousands of dollars pursuing things that I thought, oh, maybe this is the answer, maybe, right? But it was really just like throwing spaghetti against a wall and seeing what stuck, right? It's like, should I try a TV ad? Oh, that didn't work. Should I try, whatever? And so much of it it was a painful lesson in kind of, if you don't have a strategy and if you don't show up consistently, then it's super hard to gain any traction, to be top of mind. I mean, this was 24 years ago. Things are much more, busy in the world now. I mean, we hardly had the internet back then. I mean, we did, but just a little bit, right? I mean, I was actually excited when I'd boot up my AOL and they would say, "You've got mail." I'm like, "I've got mail. Somebody knows me." Right? Now I look at the hundreds of emails I get a day. I'm like, oh, I read about 3 of them. Um, but I do think that it's super important, and I appreciate you sharing the strategy and consistency components.
Yeah, yeah. And I think along with not getting the traction, like you were
Mhm.
saying, I think the danger is that we take it personally, that that we say, well, I'm not getting any phone calls from the business cards I put up at the coffee shop. So obviously nobody wants my thing.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
and we draw a lot of mistaken conclusions that then hurt us and slow us down. And yeah, so I think that's also like a hidden cost in not having that big picture plan. Yeah.
Yeah, I could not agree more. One of my favorite books that I read on a regular basis is called The Four Agreements by a guy named Don Miguel Ruiz. And the second agreement is don't take anything personally. And you think, well, that's ridiculous because life is very personal. How can you not take it personally? But the reality is that there are facts that exist, and then there's stories that we make those things mean, right? So if I'm putting up my cards at the coffee shop and nobody's calling me, the fact is nobody's calling me, but that doesn't mean I'm a bad person, that I'm not meant to do this. And sometimes, and I've had plenty of conversations with business owners where like, maybe I'm just not meant to do this because they have gotten it in their head and they're telling themselves a story and they've taken it personally, like, oh, for whatever reason, this isn't going to happen for me, or I'm not meant to do this, or I misread the signals. I thought I was supposed to do this thing, but clearly I'm not because the cards at the coffee shop aren't working. And I would say that I get it. On the one hand, it's kind of scary, and you put your hopes in these things, but again, if you can separate it out and say that there are facts and then there are stories, what does it mean? My story is that I'm meant to serve, and so I'm going to keep going because I'm meant to serve. It's just who I am, and it's what I'm about. And so if the coffee shop cards don't work, then perhaps I could try something else, right? And it's not always easy, and there's always testing and iteration and that sort of thing. But to just keep the personal feeling or story that you make up about it out of your head, because it doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve me. It rarely serves, unless you believe something like the universe has my back, or things are happening for me instead of against me. I think those things can be helpful, but just making up these random stories about how people at the coffee shop don't like you, not so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that brings us full circle in our conversation
Yes.
back to the inner work piece.
Yes, absolutely. Good. All right. So, as you know, we're doing a program to help coaches and healers who are interested in growing their business and are looking for some help, some outside perspective. And this is a program we're doing together. If people are interested, they can go to holisticbizgrowth.com. There is more information about our program there, and it's going to be a great program. Very excited about it. That's what I have to say.
Thanks for listening. Thanks so much, Ron.
All right. Thank you, Susan. Thank you.